If you've ever been stumped on the difference between Scotch versus whiskey, you've come to the right video. The easiest answer is that they are both a type of whiskey. However, their differences are significant enough to warrant a rundown. There are 4 major differences between Scotch and whiskey. These include things such as the aging process, the resulting flavor, the type of grain, and if the grain is smoked before the distillation process takes place. There are numerous kinds of Scotch-specific whiskey, and there are all kinds of ways in which whiskey is made to produce different flavorings. In this video, we're going to discuss the differences between Scotch and whiskey. You'll learn about the history of this alcohol and the many ways in which it's processed and used today. Whether you're looking to learn more for your next cocktail evening or just have a vested general interest, I'll give you a thorough rundown of Scotch versus whiskey. So with all of that being said, let's get into it. While Scotch is a type of whiskey, they are still different things in a way. Scotch whiskey is missing the E in whiskey. Whiskey with an E is produced specifically in Scotland. To be considered Scotch whiskey, it must be entirely produced in Scotland. While they are all types of distilled liquors made from a base of fermented grains, the grains go through different processing. Basically, certain grains are used for certain types of Scotch or whiskey. The resulting flavor is also quite different, with Scotch being smokier and other whiskey types are often smooth to the finish. Scotch is a type of Scottish-made whiskey that typically uses malted barley, which can undergo fermentation and smoking. The barley is malted, which is the process of allowing the grain to sprout, releasing sugars that will speed up the overall production of the alcohol. The malted grains are then traditionally heated over a peat fire, which gives Scotch whiskey its smoky flavor. According to the Scotch Whisky Association, Scotch must age for a minimum of 3 years in oak barrels. More modern techniques for Scotch creation will include grains other than just malted barley. There are also ways to infuse the alcohol with specific kinds of smoke using wooden boards, wood chips, or infusers. The origins of Scotch whiskey date back to the 15th century, with tax documents showing the existence of a distillery in Scotland. The Scottish Parliament introduced taxation on whiskey in the 1600s, which led to an increase of illegal Scotch making techniques and distilleries. This continued throughout the 1800s, but Scotch whiskey was such a beloved drink that even Scotland's famed bard Rupert Burns wrote an ode to how the whiskey made him and his kinsmen feel. Eventually, the Duke of Gordon helped propose to Scotland's House of Lords to allow for legal whiskey production. Scotch made in Scotland is made through the process of malting, mashing, fermenting, and eventual distillation. Traditional methods use malted barley, which involves steeping barley grain in water so it can germinate. This process converts starch to sugar, and once germination is done, the germinative seeds are dried in a kiln. Sometimes peat is added to add that classic smoky flavoring to Scotch. Whiskey is considered the alcoholic varieties that are made in the United States and Ireland. It is processed grain alcohol that goes through a process of fermenting, mashing, distilling, and aging. Like Scotch whiskey, whiskey is ambery gold in color, and different grains can impact its overall flavoring. Similar to Scotch, whiskey comes from cereal grain. This grain goes through the process of fermentation for sugar content, which is then extracted in the mashing step and blended into a concoction called wort. Next comes fermentation to turn the sugars into alcohol, then distillation, then aging. The long and short of it is that whiskey and Scotch whiskey are types of the same thing. However, they have 4 major differences that set them apart. We hope you enjoyed this video and encourage you to like and subscribe. Don't forget to visit momswhothink.com for parenting advice and more. Thanks for watching.